The first thing I should tell you is that I lived here until I was 11, but I wasn't allowed inside half the rooms.
Since partnering with SIE Santa Monica on their debut title, The Unfinished Swan, developer Giant Sparrow has struck out on its own with What Remains of Edith Finch, a first-person interactive title, or as many of its detractors might refer to it, a walking sim. Turns out winning a BAFTA for The Unfinished Swan wasn't enough for Ian Dallas and his team, but by switching their sights to a more linear, focused narrative, has it paid dividends, or, like the Finch family home, should it have just been left well alone? I'm Ben from What Culture, and here's our full review for What Remains of Edith Finch. 4 generations of the titular family had lived in the Finch house by the time Edith and her mother moved out when she was 11, leaving behind her great-grandmother and, her mother had hoped, the self-prescribed curse that seemed to afflict them. The Finches, a wealthy bunch who moved to America in the 1930s, have often fallen foul of rumours owing to their members essentially dropping like flies, living tragically short lives and meeting their maker due to a variety of bizarre and tragic accidents rather than anything explicable like a genetic illness. Now an 18-year-old, Edith is returning to the house having been left a key by her mother, also dead, to unlock the secrets of the house to gain some semblance of closure. And as you begin to make your way through it, you'll find many of the bedrooms, each belonging to a dead family member, have been sealed off, preventing entry. This was the case even when Edith lived there as a child, and exploring each one allows her to react to each new piece of information as the player does. Every room you gain access to is a snapshot of its owner's life, left untouched since their death, and besides being able to glean information about them from the decor and Edith's voiceover, each will contain a document that, when read, transports you to a memory of that family member, with you assuming control. These memories reveal how they came to pass, and as the document usually takes the form of a letter from one sibling or parent to another, reveal the hole they left behind when they died. The result, despite the rather spooky setup, is a touching narrative about coping with grief, loss, and acceptance of how one's own mortality affects others. As an FPI, you should really know what to expect here. You'll predominantly be walking around looking at and reading things, as well as listening to Edith's dialogue. Occasionally you'll have to use contextual controls to turn handles or open windows, but the really interesting stuff comes from the memories you experience in the various bedrooms. In one, for example, you control a little girl who's so hungry she could eat anything. After polishing off toothpaste and gerbil food, she turns into a cat and chases a bird along the rooftop and trees before turning into an owl hunting rabbits, all of which you play through. I should point out, it's a journal entry she wrote that you're reading. The game does not imply at any point that she can, in fact, turn into animals. In another, more grounded entry, you're on a swing and must use both the left and right stick to swing your left and right legs back and forth to get higher. It can sometimes be a little obtuse, as without any on-screen prompts it'll occasionally take a minute to work out what you're meant to be doing, but you get there eventually. Also interesting is the method by which your great-grandfather built the house. A bit of a crazy, cool cat, he hid all manner of secret tunnels and accessways between the rooms, and it's via these that you'll proceed from room to room, often discovering the entrance to them via what unfolds in the memories. As such, it's very linear, but in a good way. Absolutely no need for a run button here, as you'll very rarely go more than a minute or two without something to interact with or more dialogue from Edith to push things forward. Shooting for the familiar stylized photorealism seen in this genre, everything looks great. It's not going to blow people away with its visuals, but the sheer level of detail in every room of the house, from the family photos and abandoned takeaway menus to the rickety nature with which later rooms were added on to accommodate more of the family, will make you quickly forget that. The real stars, however, are the bedrooms. On top of being uniquely styled for the person to whom it once belonged, there's an unbelievable amount of items in there that clue you into who this person was and what they were about. One such room is filled to the brim with film merchandise from a burgeoning acting career, with plaques, memorabilia, and photos lining the walls. It only increases the sense that, yes, an individual lived here, a real person, and it only strengthens the sense of almost betrayal that Edith feels as her mother and great-grandmother refuse to talk about them. Once you have learned about them, however, Edith will open her journal, sketching a portrait of that person on the family tree. One of the most striking elements of the game has to be how it tells the story, as with each line of spoken dialogue, the accompanying text will appear imprinted in your environment. Much like Giant Sparrow's last title, The Unfinished Swan, the sense that you're being told a story is paramount, and this is definitely indicative of that. There are a couple of issues, however. The game begins, for example, with an outside portion having you walk down the driveway and towards the house, but unfortunately, at least on PS4, there's noticeable slowdown and frame rate issues. Thankfully, these are gone by the time you make it inside the house, but it's not the best first impression to leave. And finally, here are 3 things you need to know. Firstly, it's just 2 hours long. I've always loved FPIs because they serve as brilliant palate cleansers. Between 60-hour RPG epics and endless run-in and gun-in, smaller narrative experiences are vital. Unfortunately, this doesn't outstay its welcome, succinctly wrapping up what it sets out to divulge in powerful fashion. Secondly, if you liked Gone Home, you'll love this. The two are very similar, obviously, given you're a young woman returning to her family home, exploring it for information, but Edith Finch goes one step further by bringing across elements from The Unfinished Swan, turning what could be a rather simple trudge through a house into a colourful, fantastical adventure. Thirdly, this is Giant Sparrow's breakout moment. While their first title was made in conjunction with a larger studio, this is all their own work, and only their second game at that. To consistently create games of such high quality is something, but to have all but mastered your chosen genre with your second try is almost unheard of. Keep an eye on these guys. What Remains of Edith Finch is as touching as it is heartbreaking, but more importantly, it's relatable. It embellishes here and there with the fantastic memory sequences, but there'll be at least one topic featured in here that you'll be painfully familiar with. Weighing in at 2 hours, you could level some criticism at it being too short, but they are two of the most intriguing, well-written, and brilliantly designed hours I've ever played.
Maybe we believed so much in a family curse, we made it real.